Fulfilling your wishes is one of our key priorities at Autogefühl, and so we bring you the Subaru XV, or also Crosstrek called in the US, in the new generation. Here on Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars. Today with Thomas. We're going to talk about the exterior, the interior, and of course the driving experience of this vehicle in detail as always, and I can promise you, you will not regret watching full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! So I turn on the LED daytime running lights for you, that you can see it in this C shape. I think that's actually nicely done. It starts with halogen headlights, then you can upgrade to the full LED spec. And what's else interesting in the front? Well, it looks a little bit more grown up here for sure. Although from the front that didn't change too much, a little bit more different in the side profile for sure. It still has this rugged plastic look in the lower part. It sits also on a very new platform that all future Subaru models will sit on. So it is basically still, Impreza crossover, but this one here introduces a new platform now that all the others will also follow. And for example, the platform is double as stiff as before. That promises more agile driving fun. We'll test that one later for sure. 4.46 meters or 14'6" is the total length here of the second generation of the XV or Crosstrek, so that hasn't changed a lot. What has changed is that you have an even stronger SUV-ish look, so more moving from crossover to SUV, but still of course the real SUV or off-road car is the Forester, and this one here stays somewhat in between. Optional 18-inch rims here in the two-color scheme, and pretty unique shape of this crossover style, and it's not really plain black plastic. It has a structure, on the surface. Other than that, the design is rather round, not too much screaming out. The biggest contrast are really those silver roof rails. And you can still see somewhat of a hatch also in the side profile. And it's really interesting lengthwise because it sits basically between those normal compact hatches and the mid-size segment. So that can also be a very interesting length approach here for this very vehicle, searching its own niche. So at the rear, the tail lights are drawn more horizontally. That gives a broader stance on the road. Here also with the LED daytime running light, again in a C shape. However, I think they should have continued it here, that it fits very corresponding to the front part. The lower part is, let's say, a little bit distorted. I'm not sure which design clue it shall have. It looks somehow spectacular, but I think it doesn't follow a clean design line. Or what do you think? Other than that, I think it still has somewhat a fresh approach. You can realize that it's, the XV on the road or Crosstrek for sure. And to me, one of the most interesting parts is, talk about that more also when we drive the car and later on then in conclusion, but I can already give you one hint. It's cut, for example, in Germany, starts at about 23,000 euros. And approximately the same price in US, maybe even a little bit lower. And the car as it stands here right now as a top trim, which you don't have to go for, 33,000. And if you compare then the competitors, that's relatively low. But my tip is, as usual, get the low trim or a mid trim. Either low trim with adding some extras, or mid trim. That's always the best price performance deal you can get. Well, I went to the car wash just for you, that the car is cleaner, but well, it didn't get the engine quite, so sorry for that. But it's actually a quite good overview here, because you just have the 4-cylinder flat engines. Petrol, they are just kicking out the diesel now at Subaru. This one here is a 2-liter, 155 horsepower, and there's also 1.6 liter with 115 horsepower. The difference is about 14 seconds to 100 kilometers an hour or 62 miles an hour for the smaller one. And for this one here, 10.4 seconds. So 3.5 seconds difference in acceleration. That's actually a lot. Therefore, this one here, of course, the more powerful one, you can have a little bit more fun with that. Always combined with a CVT automatic transmission. and the standard all-wheel drive system at Subaru, 40% front, 6% rear. You don't really feel it while driving because it's just so steady, and it can be a little bit adaptive no matter where you need the torque, but it has this standard permanent setup. Let's take a look at the interior together. So we have mainly soft touch, for example at the top side of the door, even the top part, then even softer in the middle part. Also spots for a big bottle, then this carbon fiber style here at the inside of the doors. Then a relatively sporty steering wheel, also with orange contrast stitches. Also on top of the dashboard they have this material. It's not super soft, but it's also not hard. It has, it's a little bit sticky, I would say, but therefore it also, looks better than the plain stuff. So those are the optional animal skin seats. You can also go with base fabric seats in grey or black, and also with leatherette applications. Just go for those and save the money for the top trim. It's not really needed. Here, those seats are, by the way, electric, and also with orange contrast stitches. The first impression is actually it's not screaming out. Overall, it doesn't have a special style. It's like many Subarus, rather neutral, doesn't want to create too much attention. Let's get inside. Yeah, it is actually quite easy. It's a crossover, but it's not a high SUV. It needs something in between. But the entry is actually quite easy, and you also have this little bit higher seating position. It's actually quite comfortable, also recommendable for longer turns, for example. I'm 1.86 m or 6'1", and I got the seat not in the very lowest, just a little bit higher, but you see, together with the small glass roof, it gets close headroom wise. I can put the seat a little bit lower, then it's like this. So if you're really tall, then probably leave out the glass roof. That should give you a little bit more room. The steering wheel can be adjusted far in all of the directions. That's definitely nice to have. And by the way, to control the small central screen there in the front of the instruments, you use the controls right behind the steering wheel. There we go. And for the lights here, the left column, and you also have shifting pedals. Here again, the seats are electric, up, down, front, and also the rear part of the seat. Interior overview, quite traditional, quite classic. Again, this material they're using, it's somewhat soft. It looks good with the contrast stitches. You start with 6.5 inch. This one here, the optional 8-inch screen. You can see here also with an app connect. You can have, for example, here the Apple CarPlay on that, and it works really fast, but always with the home buttons. Then you can get back. You see a second screen in the top part. There, for example, you can see the temperature being changed, and it's quite useful. It looks maybe a little bit weird at first, but it's really helpful when you're driving and don't have to look down that much, but you can still look there. The steering wheel has a good compact size and actually nice grip. A lot of controls on the steering wheel though, but one I love, the heated steering wheel. Love that in winter time. Instruments, classic left and right, and a small digital screen in the middle, for example for consumption or for the digital speedometer. And the infotainment system in detail, again here the CarPlay, you can go back here, home menu. Also nice that you can switch to the music or your own map, or use the car internal GPS. That's also possible. Go to the map. And this one looks better here now. You can zoom in and out like on a smartphone. Could be a little bit more responsive, but overall I'm quite satisfied with it. Tested 1 or 2 routes and it did a quite a good job. Always nice to have an internal car GPS if your mobile phone connection is failing. You can also connect your phone then again either here with this one, or also Bluetooth would also be still possible. And in the top part you will also get GPS information if a route is running. Traditional temperature knobs on the lower part, they don't look fancy, but it's actually quite good quality, and while driving it's so helpful to have them. Then in the lower part, you see I already put the phone right there to give you a realistic look. There are two USB ports there in the front, and actually they both work with the smartphone direct connections. We have two more USB coming up, which are just for charging. I'll soon show you. And here the automatic shifting lever for the CVT transmission. And below that we got the X mode, that's the off-road mode. We don't have an off-road terrain here today available, but I can tell you for this 40% front, 60% basic off-road setting, this one here is also optimizing it then for the off-road use, also the electronic stability control and stuff. Above that, that is against rolling back when you're, for example, in a steep off-road area. And seat heating is right next to that. Of course, an option. You'll be also fine with the low or mid trim level here if you want the best price performance. The cup holders are somewhat adaptive here, so that's fine. Then this armrest could be a little bit firmer attached, but still also okay. And then a lot of room here inside and two more USB ports, and those ones are not for the connectivity, those are just for charging. And finally, the glass roof, you can just open or close it manually, and then you have those electric commands here. You can open it like this, and well, it's just a short opening, but you know, if you don't need the headroom and want some fresh air, why not? I like those floor mat logos. But here, you have to open the fuel cap always from the inside. That can be a little bit annoying maybe. Or does it have any advantage? What would you think? At the rear door they use hard plastic then on the top part, soft then at the middle part, also with the armrest, so that's also perfectly fine. Then a look at the rear seats. You can see the same style as in the front, also with ISOFIX anchor points on the outside seats. And you can flip the seat right here with that lever. Here we go with the rear. Also easy entry, not exactly 90 degrees, but fairly easy still. And you know, it's not the longest car, but the using of room is actually quite okay. So I still have some room in front of my knees, even though as I would be driving. And the same with the headroom, it does exactly fit. Still something left, so 190 meters 6'2" could still work somehow because the roof is raising again at the rear. So it's actually perfectly fine. I wouldn't mind actually. So let's see, when I flip the seats, as I just told you, there we go. It looks already quite flat, also top tether at the rear. We'll check out how that looks like from the trunk very soon. You can also sit in the middle part here. You have the seat belt there in the rear. There's a middle tunnel, of course, all-wheel drive. It's also quite hard here, and you use loose headroom for smaller trips. It's also very slim, so rather 4-people car, just for a very short trip, or if you're really small. So we're using the manual opening, and well, the length is approximately the size of a cabin trolley. This lower part you can put up for some tire replacement or tire repair kit, some more storage space. It's actually quite rectangular. What's not so nice that those anchor point stuff, which you can see at the sides, they are not really solid. They are rather from plastic. This one here is a little bit wobbly. Also not the biggest fan of the cover here. And we can actually flip the seats from here. That's good. So no, they don't have exactly a good flipping solution there from the rear, but then it's fairly easy to reach over to do this one. Then this is the full loading capacity for you, and I think you can really live with that. So let's turn down the volume of the music and start with the driving part. The sound system is actually quite nice, I have to say. Also welcome to the driving part, as known as Thomas' Driving Lounge. And it begins right here on the small or short autobahn or motorway part. And the first thing you feel when you drive this car is the CVT, the automatic transmission, the continuously variable transmission. That means there's basically one gear, and you do have the possibility with the shifting pedals here to shift in a gear. It also says so, but it's not a real gear as you would mechanically understand it. It's rather faked a little bit to have, the feeling of a gear. That can be helpful when you're rolling down a hill or so. Other than that, you usually just stay in a normal automatic mode, and you're absolutely fine with that as long as you gently control the throttle. And then it's actually a very smooth ride. So you do not feel the car shifting. That's the advantage for that. So always very soft, no matter at which speed the car actually is at. The only thing is when you hammer the throttle a little bit more, I can show you that, it can sound a little bit weird. So let me accelerate from 60 to 80. Let's also see the acceleration. There we go. This, and it stays the way. So that's the disadvantage of the CVT. The power output is quite okay actually, so I'm fine with that. This 2-liter flat engine we have here with about 150 horsepower. The other one is a little bit weaker, so I think I would recommend this one as it has more displacement. So I think that would be a good choice. However, the smaller engine, if you primarily drive this car in the city and don't use it for big motorway accelerations, then it might also be just okay. So that's just fine. Yeah, we also have the digital speedometer, a small one available, otherwise than the normal analog instruments. You've heard that at about 80 kilometers an hour the car tended to be a little bit loud already, so sound insulation wise not the best result. We will take a trip to the city now, have some corners and also some traffic situations, and then we get on the motorway again to test it once more, also acceleration and the sound insulation. As long as you drive slowly it's no problem, but sound insulation in general is definitely not the not the best of this vehicle. So when I'm doing a lane change here, by the way, now, what I feel, especially in comparison to the previous generation, they made the suspension stiffer. So in the previous generation you had more like this tilting in the corners, and here it's actually quite fine. So if you're then going for a lane change or so, it feels pretty good. Feels rather like a normal compact car. It's still a crossover, not a true SUV of that type. That would be rather the Forester. So we have this crossover mix in between. Still, the suspension is not that stiff that it would be super uncomfortable. So actually I'm quite satisfied with that. And now it seems like a little traffic. Getting back to you very soon. So we're getting it going again just a little bit, but the traffic actually is very helpful for us now, because we can test the automatic cruise control together with the traffic assistant and also what the eyesight system is showing us. So when the traffic light turns green now, I'll catch up to the cars in front of us, and then it gets really interesting, because this eyesight system we have here is a camera-based system. So some use radar-based system, some camera, some use both actually, or even other sensors available. So that's where things are heading to. This one here, pure camera-based. Has pro and cons always, which systems you are using actually. And now what I'm going to do is use the automatic cruise control, just at 35, because not so much is happening here at the moment. So, and we can even increase the speed. So I do it here on the right side of the steering wheel, now to 50. And let's see how the car reacts also when the other cars are standing still. Is reducing the speed until 0. What about starting then again in traffic? This among the key features of such a system. And so far, you know, I'm doing nothing basically, braking or throttle-wise. In this second display, I can also see that the distance is being kept, like 2 cars are being visualized. That's quite nice. So now I'm not braking. Let's see. C-Class Coupe in front of us. It's actually also smooth, the transition that the car is doing at the moment. So far that works pretty nice. So now we're coming to a standstill, almost. But you see, the system is capable of doing that. So it reduces until 0, also to standstill. Here we go. Now we're standing still. Also the car is shutting off now, stop-start function. And now when I just hit the throttle, just one tip, car wakes again and is also accelerating without me doing the acceleration work. This works pretty fine actually. So you know, one step further for the traffic jam assistant would be that the car is realizing that the car in front of you is continuing on its own. Those systems are already available on the market. That's where they miss a step here. But already that one is really helpful in traffic situations now, that you can relax a little bit more. So I think the eyesight system, as long as there is good visibility, it's pretty fine. Yeah, you can go ahead. You know, you can say radar-based systems can go better, you know, through harsher conditions. But then again, we also had it a couple of times for radar-based systems that they were also failing in bad weather conditions. So I'm not exactly sure if that's really then a big difference of those two systems. So we're getting going again. And you know, one thing about this engine and the transmission is when you push it a little bit further, you know, on the throttle. This is, by the way, the blind spot monitor. It's on the inside of the side mirrors. Blind spot monitor active, then warning you when the car is approaching from the rear. So I'll show you more again when we're on motorway. Yeah, that's active, for example, again. But of course, it's more relevant when you're driving a little bit faster and then the car approaches from the rear. Yeah, you know, about this throttle response, if you're not handling it gently, it can push you a little bit more than you might want, you know. So you have to get a feeling for that. And then the car again drives super smooth, you know, with the CVT transmission and the flat engine. Other than that, when you're not used to it, it can be like you do some acceleration or get going at the traffic light and it's like, whoa, you know, like, whoop, you hop just a step forward. And that's a little uncomfortable, especially, you know, for this car that is not really thought out to be super sporty or something like that. So you have to bear that in mind. But again, as I said, you can get easily get used to that. What is also important is the overview. So when I look right and left, the windows are still quite upright, and you might not expect it from the exterior, because from the exterior it looks indeed this more dramatic design approach now, and the overview is still quite good to all of the sides actually. It's also not too long, this vehicle, and from the feeling, it doesn't feel like a compact size car. It feels a little bit bigger, but not that much bigger. So from the overall feeling, I think they got a nice compromise here. Also, whoa, what's going on? Tire squeaking. So I think they got a nice compromise here of the size also, that it's big enough but not too big. So that's, you know, very interesting thing for sure they found. So when I'm, for example, doing lane change here now, I have enough power. Sounds a little bit weird from the CVT, but the engine gives me enough feedback, and also in basically in every kind of conditions. So you know, you have this shifting back, this theoretic shifting back function, but you don't really need it that much. So you just stay in automatic and that's it. The steering, by the way, is very light. It doesn't give you the most natural feeling or connection to the road, but it's really light to use, so that helps when parking in and out. Overall, the driving feeling of this car can be characterized as unimpressed. What I mean by that? Well, if you want to be very negative, you could say boring. But it's not necessarily boring. I say unimpressed because this car just says, you know, I take things easy. I don't have to do anything stupid. I'm fine by myself. You know, that's what the car is actually telling you. And I mean, why not? So this new generation got a little sportier than the previous one, but still it's not by all means a sporty crossover or crossover SUV. So like all other Subaru cars, besides the WRX STI, this one is rather set for comfortable, for a cozy ride, and that's perfectly fine. So the overall feeling then, as I said, unimpressed and to some extent neutral. It doesn't want to scream out for attention that much. It doesn't want to go in a certain direction. And I mean, why not? What I also realized while driving, the second screen on the top part, I promise you to get back on that, it is indeed quite helpful, because now I don't have to look too much further down to the controls. I stay close to the road with my eyes and I can see the temperature I've set. I can see the outside temperature and also the time, for example. So that's quite helpful, definitely. Here, by the way, now this Smart for 2 is overtaking us now. There we go with the blind spot warner. And also when I'm, for example, having a GPS route mounted, then also the next intersection or something is displayed on the top part. And again, I don't have to put my side to the lower part. That's pretty helpful. Now 80 to 100 from acceleration. Let's go. Actually quite good result, and I like this spontaneous reaction. So again, although the sound from a CVT then combining with the high RPM sound weird, the reaction time of this engine, so it's really responsive. I like that. Great job. So I mean, we did some traffic, we did some rolling around. Before that I was also driving rather relaxed, just this one acceleration test now or two. You know, what about the consumption? So, you know, with the official figures, with the old cycling test, the old test cycle, to be precise, usually it's about 2 to 3 liters above the official average. And this will improve now with WLTP, and the figures you get in the US, guys, they are also closer to reality. And what the official figure here says is about 7 liters, and that's not realistic, but you can, if you drive it calmly, score something about 8 liters on 100 kilometers. If you drive it only in the city, it will rather jump to about 11. But I think, you know, a good average could be something around 8. We also have that at the moment. That's not the worst, but it's, yeah, I know it's not really good either. So yeah, we have to live with that. So we continue a little bit further on the motorway. We'll set the cruise control, so we're fine by that. Now let's see, when I'm just changing the lane, how the cruise control reacts then. That's still working, that thing? That was a very smooth transition. Actually quite nicely done. Why not? Let's now see what happens at the intersection. And the brakes. I would have... That's still okay, yeah. I think I'm fine with that. So now a little bit in the roundabouts. I'll cancel the cruise control now. It's somehow, you know, gives me a better feeling then. Here we go. Yeah, you know, it's not the sportiest ride, that's for sure, but it's actually quite okay. So you wouldn't expect the sportiest ride of that vehicle, but it's also, it's not too lazy overall. The car doesn't feel too heavy. Let's get on the motorway the other side once more. Also see some more of the acceleration now from 40 kilometers an hour. and I'll push it 60, 70, 80. It's perfectly fine. So it's actually a pretty performant engine. Really nice. So as long as you stay in those 80 kilometers speed regions, you also find sound insulation wise. Just on longer motorway trips, if you're going like 120 or faster, then it can get actually a little annoying. And even those small acceleration tests didn't change that much with the consumption, so that's also quite fine. It seems as long as the engine is warm once, then it's also quite fine, you know, with that. So let's see, also with GPS while driving, as the infotainment system is a little bit cleaner and clearer now with the new generation, also a little bit bigger with the optional bigger infotainment system, as I explained you earlier, you can very well see the route. And then again, you know, if you have set a trip or a route, then the next commands are also transported into the upper screen. So the user interface is somehow conservative or classic in this part, also, you know, with reaching the classic temperature buttons, but I really like that. And that way you can also do it blindfolded, basically. So you reach for the temperature knob, turn it, and then you just have to watch a little to the right to this top screen, and then you're seeing what the temperature is being set to. And especially if you think about while driving, I mean, it's an easy solution, but probably this easy solution is leading some of those super new, high, fancy, dual, triple, quadruple screen, 20-inch layout, whatever, where I set the temperature in the screen, and then as soon as I set the temperature, I'm crashing against the next tree or something like that. So, absolutely fine by this. So overall, relaxing ride. As I said earlier, an unimpressed ride. Hardly anything to criticize with that. Maybe steering could be a little bit more direct, but then again, it's not a sporty car, so it's overall also fine. It doesn't feel like driving a premium vehicle, but it doesn't feel like driving a cheap vehicle either. So Subaru is getting in that niche in between. You know, that's at least what I feel while driving. And still price-wise, it's still attractive for that. That's it from driving. And now to our conclusion for today, the Subaru XV or Crosstrek in the new generation. Well, from the exterior it looks more SUV-ish, as I said earlier. I think that does the vehicle quite well. From the interior they've also stepped up the game, a little bit better material quality. That's good. The infotainment, the connectivity part, also quite comfortable. It's not super much screaming out, so the whole car also wants to be, let's say, a little bit more neutral, appealing to a lot of people at the same time. They are not really daring, you know, but that's also what the customers appreciate. The using of room we have the interior is actually quite good, and you also feel that the new platform is being used, as the car is also a little stiffer in the driving, so a little bit more agile. It's still a rather comfortable car, and as I said earlier, this car here is really unimpressed by everything. So it just rolls also with the CVT automatic transmission, which is very calm to drive there as well. And if you know that how to use it, then it can also be quite helpful in everyday driving. Not sporty at all, of course, but that's also not what this car is for. And if you have a chance to take it off-road, it's also still capable with the permanent all-wheel drive. And for this all-wheel drive, the consumption with about 7.5 liters, about 8 liters on 1 kilometer, is actually still quite acceptable. Interesting concept here, especially if you consider the price, which is still very low if you compare it to some of the competitors. Then, thanks for tuning in here today. What do you think about this vehicle? Tell me in the comments, and also tune in next time.